Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. It's just Marco here once again, and I am here today to review Feud, Capote versus the Swans, Episode 5, The Secret Inner Lives of Swans. First off, I would have done this review, and I feel like I've said this every single week that I've reviewed this show, which is funny. It's like, maybe I should just stop saying it, and you guys should just expect for the reviews to be a little bit later in the day. I would have done the review earlier, it's just we had to do The Office Season 1 review, and that took precedent since, I don't like doing reviews with Safi later on in the day. As you guys can tell, like with that, the Ghost of Mrs. Muir review, because when it gets later on in the day, she gets tired and she starts being really repetitive and irritating because, I have to kind of interrupt if she's going on for too long or if she's being repetitive and nonsensical. And so, I prefer to do reviews with her earlier on in the day for the most part. But anyways, another thing I should also mention, which I thought that would be very funny to talk about, is that, and it's also in theme with the show, 2 days ago, guess what happened? I was asleep, dreaming, and I had this really weird dream. I was on, a vacation. I was at this, resort, at, a beach resort, and there was this guy who was, a maintenance guy, and it was Brad Pitt with a mullet, and he said something to me, and then I looked over and there were these two swans, and the swans were as big as humans. They were human-sized swans. And then there was a giraffe, and the two swans were fighting the giraffe in slow motion, and Brad Pitt, the maintenance worker, he had to go over and break up the fight, and I don't know, that's weird. But I thought that was hilarious that I had that dream right before the next episode came out. Maybe it was me subconsciously remembering that the show was going to air pretty soon the next day or whatever. So this episode starts off in the past, quote unquote, again. So they're doing a lot of time jumping. This episode on IMDb, it has the lowest rating so far out of the whole series. It might be just because of the time jumping, because this episode, chronologically, it takes place in between episodes 1 and 2, and it really feels like that's where it should have been in the first place. It shouldn't have been episode 5, because it's after last episode where everything was kind of at peace and Truman made amends with Babe, it was kind of weird to go back, and now we're back to where it was after the article came out, and then it was, as the title suggests, Capote versus the Swans. We see the fallout from the article with Babe and her husband, and so basically this episode is almost entirely revolved around this other author and Truman. This other author named James Baldwin. Never heard of him before. He takes Truman to lunch and basically spends all day with him so that Truman can talk to him about the Swans and about the secrets that he didn't write about yet. Also because he says the gay community doesn't really have each other to comfort each other in times of need. And so he felt like he really needed to comfort Truman. And he came all the way from Paris, too. So, he was really serious about, comforting a fellow gay writer, I don't, because it's just kind of funny to me, because if I was in a time of need and crisis, I'm not gay, but, just in terms of, me being, an artist or a filmmaker, I couldn't ask, like a filmmaker that I know who's in like France to come and see me. So like Truman is very privileged. He's got like a call boy or something. He can just call over from Europe, or if the guy from Europe like senses that he needs him, like he'll just come on right over. Like that's pretty awesome, you know. Like that would be a pretty cool service to have, like to subscribe to. Like, oh wait a second, that could actually be pretty good. Wait a second. You could have like an app. It would be an exclusive app. Like the ones where, the celebrity dating ones, which I don't know why I'm not on that yet, because I'm pretty much a celebrity to myself, you know. And but you could have an app, and it would have a bunch of people in the film world. And these would have to be people who aren't, like, a part of cancel culture. And so, like, whenever you'd have, like, a crisis go on, like Truman has in this episode, you could go on there. You could talk to them, talk to the other people on there, and maybe get one of them to come over and see you. I don't know. That's a really fucking good idea, by the way. Like, someone really needs to make that a thing. Like, that would be perfect. Like, it could be probably for any type of people. Like, you could have a bunch of different apps. Like, I guess, they already have, like, friendship apps and stuff like that. But I just mean, like, I don't know. Like, it's not necessarily for making friends. It's just for specialty occasions, like in times of need, like Truman had in this episode. Now, I would say that a lot of this episode, this is what I asked for after episode 1, where we're finally shown, like, the full picture with these swans. Truman, he goes into detail about, what the swans are really like, and, how they're really a lot worse than it seems. Like, remember when I just called them just mean girls? They're a lot worse than mean girls. He makes a point to say that he was not even trying to go after the women, or at least he thought. That was kind of weird. He said he was trying to go after the husbands. But it seems like it's true, because, like, after he goes through all the dirt in this episode, it seems like, wow, he really made these women look like saints. Like, he really made them look like poor innocent victims who, they were just these high society women who didn't have anything wrong that went on with them personally, and so yeah. These swans, they had tons of affairs themselves. They had tons of guys that they just brought over and screwed while their husbands were away at work, whatever. He even would help pick out outfits for them. And they had a funny one where Babe, she was dressed up in a pirate costume. That was really funny. And Slim, played by Diane Lane, even moved her husband to the guest house and openly brought in suitors. And I thought, wow, like, this is so much worse than anything Truman has done so far in the entire season. Like, that's pretty bad. And then also he kind of exposed a double standard. What happens when the swans get caught cheating? Like, what do they have to do to their husbands to make up for it? Well, nothing. They don't have to do anything. But what happens when the men get caught cheating? There's hell to pay, as he says. They have to buy them gifts. They have to really, like, make up with them before anything else happens. And so I hadn't thought about that, actually. And then he goes into, also, these swans are really racist. I was like, Truman in this episode, he eviscerated the swans. He roasted them, like, hardcore. Like, he like, they really are the worst. I mean, they are so much worse than Truman after watching this episode. Like, because he talks about how, like, you don't get invited to parties if you're not a certain shade of white. all the help is all like black people and, stuff like that. But then I will say the only thing I didn't like about this episode was that there was a shitty agenda line, or there were a couple. I didn't really pay attention to the rest. I kind of did the Safi thing, where I turn my brain off and just go, la-di-da-di-da. There was this agenda line where Mr. Baldwin says, every person in America is guilty of racism in one way or another, even if they don't know it. And it's like, that is really cringeworthy. That is just pure, like, bullshit. That's stupid. And then they started talking about, like, other stuff, and I just, But, yeah. And then they show Babe. She's at her child's birthday party. She's getting drunk off her ass. And she just hates this birthday party because she hates how, like, chaotic it is and how, there's a big mess being made and she can't do anything about it. And she also hates the clown. There's a clown that's there. And she tells this other woman to kick out the clown. And it's so funny because after she does that, she's stumbling around drunk and she looks like a clown at this party. And she goes into the bathroom to hide out and, she falls into the bathtub and she's taking a bath with all her clothes on. And it's like, who's the clown really? Like, that guy, he's doing a job, They also mentioned that some of the Swans, they wanted to do, like, creative projects, but they didn't realize that in doing these creative projects that they would have to take orders from other people. I thought that was pretty funny, too. Apparently, the Swans also treated Anne, if you remember Anne Woodward, the woman who possibly killed her husband and then killed herself, they treated her terribly, and they treated her just as bad as Truman did. So their whole remorse show in episode 1 was totally fake and phony to me. Like, that's just like, now I look back at that and I kind of cringe because it's like, in that moment I was like, oh, these poor innocent people. But now I'm like, wow, they're just, they're fake. They're totally fake and phony. At least Truman is real for the most part, He knows he's destroying himself with alcohol. He knows that he can be a bad person. He knows that his boyfriend is abusive. He knows all this stuff. He's not like living in denial like these Swans. And then probably my favorite part of the episode was when Truman talked about what all the Swans ate. He's like, the Swans live on air and water and tiny portions of rare meats. and it was really funny because they showed all these different dishes with like these little tiny portions of food. And you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of American Psycho, which is sort of funny because, Chloe Sevigny is in this and she was in American Psycho, which, by the way, that's one of my favorite movies. I really love that movie. Even though the main character is really evil, like, it's just a very fun movie to watch. So that was my favorite part of the episode for sure. I thought that was like a great tribute, like a subtle tribute, I guess. And the way that they eat too was really strange. Like, they're just, they take this little tiny piece of meat and they're like remember Norman Bates in Psycho? You eat like a bird. Like, that's what I wanted to say to these Swans. Like, they're all sitting there eating like birds, and Truman's just sitting there like, hey, I'm gonna write about you guys someday. And I would say too, so basically this episode ends with Mr. Baldwin taking him home and giving him a motivational speech. And it's a really nice motivational speech, actually. It's very, very good. And it's a 10 out of 10. You could probably get a great motivational speech like this on Cameo if you pay the right celebrity like $1 million, on the Cameo website. You get those little videos for millions of dollars. Yeah. Plus taxes and service fees. Plus the tip at the end. Like, I didn't I won't even talk about Cameo now. I've kind of grown to despise Cameo for what it's become. It's sort of become like Cashmeo, because like it's just become so ridiculously overpriced that I think like I'm not really itching to use it very much anymore, especially after the recent ones weren't as good as I would have hoped. But I would say after this episode, and I would challenge people to disagree, I would say after this episode, you're fully invested in Truman Capote. You wouldn't sympathize with any of the Swans after this episode. And I think that that's something interesting, is that, like, yes, this episode should have been after episode 1. But if it was, you would have been on Truman's side all along. You wouldn't have been on any of the Swans' sides. You wouldn't have really cared about them at all. And so now there's 3 episodes left, and I mean, I'm telling you guys, I am not going to switch sides again. I'm fully invested into Truman because he's got talent, and basically that's what Mr. Baldwin came there to do. He came there to give Truman some motivation and give him a kick in the pants, basically. Truman starts writing again right after that. He for 3 whole days, gets back on track. He isn't drinking, but then there's one little twist at the end. And this whole sequence, it kind of either reminded me of like Hannibal or American Horror Story or something. At the very end, there's this guy. He's an aspiring chef. And what happens is, I should preface this. Mr. Baldwin tells Truman that the only person in England who can legally eat a swan is the Queen. She's above everyone, even though she's just some random old woman who has bad teeth and smells funny. She's more important than everyone in England because, they still haven't gotten past the 16th century yet in England. Everyone else in the world basically has moved on except for England. I hope I don't lose a subscriber over that comment. That'd be pretty funny. I'm just having fun here, But after he finds that out, Truman has an aspiring chef catch and kill an actual swan so that he can eat it. And I thought, wow, I don't believe that for 1 minute. This is totally wrong. This never happened before. No way that this happened, that's for sure. Like, if this happened, this would be, like, talked about, like, all over the place. Like, I've never heard of this before, and I know that this show does take some creative liberties, and I would just really infer that is or guess that is a creative liberty, easily. Like, I really do not believe that he had someone get an actual swan to eat. I think that's hogwash. So anyways, this episode I really, really enjoyed. You know why? Because I've been asking for it since episode 1, or episodes 1 and 2, I should say. Like episodes 3 and 4, they kind of gave us some of this stuff. They kind of got into more detail with them. But this episode really, like, laid it all out for you so that you can see these swans, they're no one to idolize. They're no one to look up to. They're no one to take inspiration from. Like how people, like, ask, like, where do you get your fashion inspiration from? Do you get it from celebrities? Do you get it from influencers? And it's like, you could not get, you should not be influenced by these people at all after this episode. Like, ew. So yeah, I can't wait to see the rest of the season. And I'm being serious, guys. Like, if I didn't like this episode, if I didn't like this show, I would say so. You guys know that. I'm not gonna, do a fake review, like Chris Stuckman or someone like that, where I pretend like everything is good because I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, like, I'll tell the truth in my reviews. So, anyways, please like this video and comment and tell me what you thought of the episode. If you're still watching, because I noticed, like, with my first 2-episode review, I don't know if it's just because I did it the earliest, but it has over 500 views. Whereas this, or the past couple episodes, they don't really have as many viewers. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then please subscribe to our channel if you'd like to see more honest movie reviews. I mean, yeah, all sorts of reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.